All right, started it up.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
Honey, bonjour. Nandito may mga kanag, our relatives. Shungwe kapo ang tishenen kas. Kuha pabigan ni kag and don jiba. Bigwich bashko de jibik. Bashko de jibik. Bigwich and our relative Herb Sam. I want to say Miigwech for helping name this program and helping getting it started. I'm gonna sing this. It's a short song, and we always sing it a lot of times. So two push-ups. Miigwech the way again. So drum is my grandson's drum. So his name is Ogama Beneshi. This is a drumstick came from the Timberland Singers, and it was a gift to Ogama Beneshi from Jerry Dearly. So I want to thank them for these, my relatives for this gift for our sage. A lot of times when we uses the sage, we take off our glasses. I got glasses. We take off our jewelry. We could always put them on when we're done with our Washkude Jibik. This Jibik talks about comes from the word we call it Jibai, and the Jibai is a manadu. It's a spirit that's on that journey. We don't know how long a spirit will be on their journey. In that other side, in that other world, there's no such thing as time. Some say it takes 4 days, but some say you got to finish these certain things on your journey before you complete it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Right now, we're in the middle of a hard struggle here in Minnesota. Also, all of our reservations, they're struggling with this horrible, I suppose you can call it a disease. I don't know, sickness. When you think of what a disease is, it's something that is you really don't know exactly how you get it. It's also something that there's no cure, no known cure. So that's I suppose that's the definition of a disease. But we do things right now for this, what we think is right. We use these hand sanitizer and we try to kill the germs on our hands. Even like today when I come into this building, you know, the temperature check thing, you know, you want to check your body temperature, hand sanitizer, pretty much wherever I go, I wear a mask. And the whole idea of these things, you know, your temperature, this, staying away from people, it's called prevention. And so I want to thank Connie McKee, Miigwech, for inviting me here to talk about this topic. And I got the invite about a week ago, and I've been thinking about it. You know, what it means. And I asked a couple of people, I said, what is prevention? How can you prevent somebody from drinking? How can you prevent somebody from taking drugs? And this one person said, you can't do nothing about it. If they want to drink, they're going to drink. You can't stop them. And I said, oh, if they want to drink, if they want to go out there and take drugs and smoke weed, no matter what you say, you can't stop them. They're going to do it. You just can't stop them. And that's just the way it is. And it's true. People are different. You know, all people are different. And so I tried to look more at what is prevention. Prevention basically is trying to stop something from happening. Stop something from happening. To stop something, for example, like drinking. To stop something from getting worse, like taking drugs. That's what prevention is. And one of the main differences, I think, which is important, is the age of the people. And why I say that, it's like, I think of my dad, all right? My dad, I grew up with, and it wasn't my real dad, it was my stepdad. He was a chronic alcoholic. And when I thought about him, I thought of how many times did we try to stop Dad from, from drinking? You know, we tried putting him in treatment. He tried that the day out. The first time he was back drinking again. The first day he got out. Then they put him out in Bell Health program, which is another treatment center. He was there for 3 months. The day he got out, he started drinking again. And so it has to do almost with what the other person says. If they want to drink, they're going to drink. There's nothing to do about it. With the age, you know, you get set in your ways. You learn behavior. And that learned behavior becomes normal. So for him to drink pretty much day after day and to turn into a chronic alcoholic, for him was normal. Sadly, after years of trying, we buried my dad from cirrhosis of the liver. And he was pretty young. He's a veteran, he's out at Fort Snelling, but the cirrhosis of the liver was from drinking alcohol for too many years straight. He was in his early 60s. I think he was like 62 years old when he died. And it was a horrible, horrible thing. I was there and I watched him, you know, when his skin changed color and he turned really dark, and his skin changed color and he turned yellow. It was a horrible thing to see. Could I have prevented that? I sure tried. You know, I don't think I really could have prevented his death, but I tried a lot of things. Even when he went to the hospital, the doctors, once he got to a certain level, you know, it's like if this was your liver, huh? in your, this is your liver inside you. And they say your organs are like that. When you start drinking, your liver, part of it goes away each time. You drink more and more, you lose part of your liver. You see that? It goes more and more and more, your body parts. This is the physical part that I'm talking about. Your body is physically being destroyed little by little. You drink more, years and years later, in your liver, in years and many, many years later, 20, 30 years later, it gets destroyed. And finally your liver is small. And you see what happens with your liver? It goes away. It goes through your urine and you pee it away. You pee away. What you have left is what you live with. That's the physical destruction that I'm talking about. And that's what happened with my dad. Also, it really don't matter what sex you are. If you're male or if you're female, it don't matter. The same damage happens if you're a man or a woman. There's there's a lot of cultural differences in our tribes. There is in our belief systems, but it don't matter if you're Dakota or Ojibwe, Arapaho, or whatever nation you are. It don't matter. It's the same physical destruction that happens. In our lifetime, we go through different things. That's where I'm talking about age. And we all learn at different ages. We learn different ways at different ages. Some of us are pitiful and we don't grow up with certain things. If we're lucky and our parents are involved in cultural traditions, in our ways of singing on a drum, learning with dance regalia, learning about Paul, that's helpful. But there's a lot of different beliefs that I just wanted to talk about, and some of that has to do with our young people and growing up, how they're taught when they grow up. They learn from their environment. They learn from the ones around them. Okay. My environment, as I said, was all pretty much alcohol. So as I was growing up, that's what I learned. Drinking was normal. That was a normal part of my life, was to drink. So by the time I'm 14, 15, 16 years old, I'm pretty much involved with drugs and not a lot of heavy drugs. Mostly it was marijuana, street drugs. Trying different things. I don't know if you ever heard of window pane, but it's an acid. I tried that one time. And I'll just tell my acid story real shortly to tell you my experience with drugs. Is that my friend's his name was Frank Kahumbash. And Frank said, hey, want to try some? Yeah, you got a couple of dollars. We used to go on Cedar and Riverside area back. And so this was in the late 1960s, 68, 69, somewhere in there when I was 15 and 16 years old. And so we went and got these two little tiny tablets. They're like smaller than your fingernail, just a little tiny tablets. And just tiny little thing. And I think we paid $2 each. They were pretty cheap. He gave me one, and he gave two of them, and I got them off the street. And he took two. But anyways, we went over to my mom's, and we had an orange pop. We went up in the attic there, or the second floor I had a room up there. It was on 25th and Cedar. Before the projects, we used to have a house there. It was on 25th and Cedar. And it was upstairs where my room was. And Frank and I went up there and we started trying it. Hey, let's try this. And I took one and Frank, he put it in your lip there, just let it melt. And he took his and he's about 10 minutes later, he started, oh, wow, you see that? And I'm sitting over there, huh? What? I don't see nothing. Just like now, everything's seeming normal. So I said, hey Frank, mine ain't working. I'll take the other one. All right. I'm on my second one. So I took my second one, and just about a minute later, I had to take a drink of pop, that orange pop, you know. So I took a drink like that. But I was drinking my orange pop, and what I did is I took my pop and I lifted it up. So I'm pouring that orange pop on my face. It was crazy. And then I started seeing the colors that he was talking about, and I was kind of, holy cow, Frank, I don't know why I'm doing this. Oh, it's working, he said. So then I had, the other thing I did is I started acting up. I had some dance bustles there, and I put them on, by feathers. I was a fancy dancer back then, but I put them on, and I started walking around the room, and I got to the window up there, the second floor window, and I said, I'm gonna try to fly. And I jumped out there and I landed on the hood of my car and I went tumbling, messing up my bustles and everything else. But my mom and my brother, my older brother and Frank and all of them come running out there and they grabbed me. What's the matter with you? And then my sister Duncan said he's taking some shit. You know, he took some shit. Him and Frank were taking shit upstairs, and that was window pane. They took me to the emergency room in the hospital. They all held me down, and the ambulance came, and they took me to Hennepin County. And I'm laying there in Hennepin County Hospital, and I looked up at the, it's a mirror. There's a mirror that above you like that, for a light, right? And I was thinking, as I was watching that old light up there, I was thinking, I need to get on the other side of the light because that's the real world over there. This is the wrong world over here. So I start tearing those things they had me tied down. I was fighting them, and I finally got up to that thing up there, and I was jumping around in the room with the light, trying to get into the light. You know, all of that, and then all those orderlies or the hospital people came grab me and threw me down. But anyways, it was a bad experience I had with that. Only time I ever tried it in my life. It's called window pane. Back then it was a street drug. It was called acid. By August of 1972, I ended up drinking. So I'm thinking of my year, 68, 69, 70. Going back when I was, I got sent up anyways, shortly after that incident there. Go back in my story a little bit. I got sent to Glen Lake. And I was at Glen Lake Reform School. And I was there for 5 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. And when you're in jail, you'll remember everything. You're writing down, man, 3 months gone, 4 months. When am I getting out? You know, I want to get out of those places. You don't like it there. And they told me I could not go home. You know, I could not go home to my mom because there was too much drinking there. It was not a good environment. So my grandma agreed to take me in. And it was probably the greatest lesson in my lifetime was when my grandma, her name was Mary, her maiden name is Butcher, her last name is Bruner. She took me in and she said to me that that next morning, she said, I want to talk to you. She said, I'm going to tell you something here. I want you to remember this. She said, I'm an old lady. pay rent here. I pay our phone bill. I pay our light bill. And I only get a social security check once a month. And if I have a little bit left, I'll take it and go to bingo. And she said, don't expect nothing from me. Don't expect any money. Don't expect nothing. You got a place to live and that's it. And if you want anything, figure it out. Go find a job, go work for it. And so that's what I did. I went around to some of the day labor places, and I'm only 50 years old, and they said you're gonna have an ID, and you gotta be 16. So I couldn't get a job anyplace. But old man Frank Weaver said, hey, come on over there, I'll try to get you on at Park and Lake Car Wash. I said, all right. And so I went over there with him, and the first day they didn't put me on. You know, Frank taught me a good work lesson. He taught me to always be to work early before the boss. We were getting there, you know, 5:45 in the morning. Sometimes we get there about 5:30. The boss got there about 6. They opened the car wash right around 6. And Frank was getting on. But by the third day, you know, I got there and sat there, you know, 2 or 3 days, and I told him I wanted to work, but I didn't have an idea, and he finally agreed to give me a chance. And I finally got a job at the car wash. But the lesson is what Frank taught me. He taught me to get to work on time and show the boss that you wanted to work, show that you're committed, and don't talk back, don't ever argue, you know, just do your job. That's what Frank taught me. And to this day, those are some of the work patterns that I try to keep with. Those are valuable lessons from my grandma telling me to, you know, to not to count on her for anything, to figure it out. That's a valuable lesson. If you want to get something, you know, figure it out. Sadly, I figured out stealing cars and stuff before that, you know, before I got sick before. And then Frank taught me about how to work. That was good, you know, to be to work, to be friendly, to be nice, no matter who you work with, because, you know, they're the ones that pay for you. By August of 1972, I got in trouble again. I was drinking, not working. This was a weekend. Back up real quick. I ended up with my grandma. I ended up working, saving money through the car wash. I saved enough to get my driver's license. She said, if you want to drive, learn to do it right. I got my driver's license. I ended up saving enough for a car, a 1961 Chevy. That was my first car. And I ended up saving enough for my own apartment. 16 years old, I had my own apartment, I had a car, I had a driver's license. I was going to South High School. I had my own place at 16 years old. And so those were valuable lessons from Frank and my mom that I still carry, and my grandma that I used to call her mom, that I still carry to this day. But I ended up in trouble again in 1972, August of 72. I ended up on an assault charge in Hennepin County Jail. And went to jail at the end of August, I think it was like August 26th. And my mom came to visit me, and she said, you know, I didn't live with my mom, I didn't hardly ever see her, but she came to visit me. She said, I'll get you out if you want to come live with me, but you got to behave. I was misbehaving, I was drinking. I said, oh, okay. And so she got me out, and I started painting with my brother George, and started doing some of the work that he did. You know, and I had a car, and I didn't drink. And got a job out at Tonka Toys out there in Mound, Minnesota. It ended up, not only did Frank get a job out there, but so did my stepdad, Jimmy Weaver. I talk about Frank as my stepdad and Jimmy Weaver as my stepdad. They both are. So that's a whole nother story. But then George got out there, and then George's girlfriend at the time was Karen. And then she ended up out there, and then Grandpa Jim ended up out there, and I was driving everybody. So wherever I went, I was always bringing in our people there. So we all ended up out there. But there was a sign I seen at the Legal Rights Center when I went to an AA meeting. I started doing that, went to AA meetings, and finally I went to court. And they said, you have a choice, 5 years in prison for assault or go to treatment. In 1973, treatment is no longer, I didn't know what it was. Simply, I didn't know what treatment was. I remember one flew over the cuckoo's nest. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but that's what I thought treatment was. I thought, oh man, they're gonna shock my forehead. They're gonna do something up here. Because when I went to the treatment center, there's all doctors there, and taking my temperature and blood pressure, and they were feeling my head and feeling all over, and I didn't know, no clue what treatment was. So I kept waiting for the shock. The thing is, when I did that assault, right? In 1972, I didn't remember. I didn't remember what I did. I got in a fight and I hurt somebody pretty bad. And they wanted to send me to prison for 5 years for that. But I didn't know what I did. I learned in treatment, they did their lectures. I learned that I was having a blackout because I drank too much. And I started thinking back, the way I drank was whatever was there. If we had beer, fine. If we had cold duck, fine. If it was drinking with my dad, and all he had was wine, that's all I drank. Whatever was available. That's how my drinking came. I didn't just drink beer, I just didn't drink mixed drinks or that, whatever was there until it was gone. That was the way we drank. That's the way I learned to drink. And so I listened to my mom one time in my life, February of '73. I went to treatment. There's a lot more I can say about that, but I just want to say that by going to treatment prevented me from ever getting in that kind of trouble again. I stopped assaulting people. I stopped getting, doing that drunk behavior. I stopped stealing cars. I stopped doing all those kinds of things. It changed me. I went back to dancing, which I was doing, but I started getting more into beadwork. I started finding sober activities. For a lot of us, when I was 19 years old, drinking wasn't even legal in 1973 for 19-year-olds. It was, I think, July of '73 when they turned it back to 18. And I was in treatment in February of '73. So all my drinking history wasn't even legal. None of it was. So maybe I was sneak drinking my whole life, and that's how I learned. But anyways, I'm going to change my story a little bit and talk about after treatment. I met a guy at the treatment center. Real quick, I just want to mention his name. His name was Don Goodwin. And Don came in and did a lecture. And his words stick with me. His words of when we drink, we're practicing the white man's ways. And those words stuck with me, and they still stick with me today. I didn't want to grow up as being somebody who practiced the white man's ways. I wanted to just grow up being an Anishinaabe, learning our, I suppose, our indigenous ways. You know, I wanted to be remembered as a dancer, a singer, you know, someone that went to our ceremonies, somebody that practiced our ways. And so that's where I've pretty much focused my whole life. And Don helped me to remember that. So a lot of times when I was younger and I started thinking about drinking, I was like, well, maybe I can, you know, work on my dance outfit instead. Maybe I can go to a powwow this weekend instead. In planning stuff, working and saving, and you know, just getting an outfit is hard because there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I did get my first dance outfit from Dennis Banks, and he told me a story about when he lost his grandma. He took his dance outfit, gave 2 arm bustles and a back bustle, and a head bustle, and a big breastplate. That's what he gave to me as a gift. He said, "This is your outfit." And those were how fancy dancers did it back then. They had arm bustles, one back bustle. There was a bustle on top, or a feather. It was a feather roach. And they had these breastplates. And those were the fancy dance outfits. And Dennis would say to me, he said, every powwow you go to, put something new. So in time, I ended up with different new bustles. In time, I ended up with, you know, a roach. In time, I ended up with different things for my fancy dance outfit. So I picked that up. That was probably a very valuable lesson for me to start going to powwows. But I needed more. You know, powwows are usually Friday or Saturday, and maybe one session Sunday. Right now is a hard time, you know, with this COVID stuff. We don't even do powwows anymore. They just stopped doing them. You can still do a lot, you know, making drums. You can learn how to do that. You can learn how to make, you know, different things. This is just a hard thing to learn. My uncle, Funky, made this one, making sticks, you know, making these medicine bags. There's so many different things you can learn and teach yourself. But also you need to be active in something. I took up as a hobby bowling. I became a pretty good bowler, you know, bowling a 300 game, 800 series. I did a lot, but that's how I was growing up throughout my life. I always start trying to do things. I took up fishing, taking the kids out, you know, once a year to Rush Lake, Minnesota. We'd go have a great time fishing. Another thing that I want to just mention, which still sticks with me to this day, is going to ceremony. I go to a lot of sweat lodge ceremonies. Right now, I've been going to them weekly. I go to one. I was at one 2 days ago on Thursday. I was at a sweat lodge ceremony. Today is a Saturday, but those are important to me. And I started going within 2 weeks after I went to a AA meeting after Meadowbrook. Old man, his name was Willard Pipeboy. And Willard brought me in there and he said, you know, this is our treatment center. This is our way here. And this will help you stay sober. You know, it did, because I started going to sweat lodges. Not only did Willard help me, Don Goodwin started taking me to prison sweats, and I started volunteering in prison sweats all over Minnesota. And I started going to those for many years. I can remember an old man one time. This was in 1975. And it was the day my son, Joey, was born. And that old man, I got into the training program with the Minnesota Council. And that was, while I was working at Tonka Toys, I seen this flyer and I filled out that flyer. And sure enough, they hired me to be one of the first Indian trainers in Minnesota. It was through the Minnesota Native American Council. There was Fred Jones, he was the elder. Josephine Johnson was the lady. Adam Lucier was from Red Lake, was the man, and I was the youth that they hired. But part of that program, Willard Pipeboy did a sweat lodge ceremony for us. And I will never forget, what Willard talked about. And he said, take these things, it's our way. As I grew up a little bit more in, learning our cultural ways, my aunt, her name is Dorothy Sam, she would say, we got different tribes here in Minnesota, but also there's different teachings that you'll go through. Some teachers might tell you one thing, another teacher might tell you the exact opposite thing. Taking what works for you is what's important, but also at the same time to respect their ways, because that might work for them. So a lot of what I'm trying to say here is Dorothy's teaching. What I'm saying might work for you if you're trying to learn, our ways. It might work, but it might not. Like with my dad, things that worked for me didn't work for my dad. A lot of our people don't know how to sing because they're not taught. Getting taught your first song, that's an important lesson. When you're a young person, some of our young people still haven't been on their first, not only their first sweat lodge, but their first fasting. They haven't been out there. That was a part of our way of growing up, is getting out and learning. They call it like you're coming of age. You go out and for your first fast. We go through 4 life cycles. First we're born as a male. We grow up as a boy, a young baby, a boy, or a young adult. We pretty much do whatever we want to do. Then our responsibilities change when we become a parent, we become a dad, we become a father. Those are hard and different responsibilities of being a father. Because now you got to raise some kids over there, help teach them. At the same time, we have a responsibility as an uncle, with our nieces and our nephews and all those that look up to us. But probably in our fourth way is when we become a grandpa. We have different responsibilities too. With behaviors, we need to say things. We need to speak up. We need to tell them when they're making mistakes, to the kids. But teaching in a way where it's almost like with my grandson, I'm trying to teach him without ever hollering at him. That's a hard thing to do. How could I teach somebody a lesson without never hollering? When you grow up around that, you gotta tell them, you gotta set limits. You can't just let them do whatever they want to do, because then they get spoiled and they don't learn right. So that's a hard way to teach somebody, or to teach them without ever hitting them. without ever spanking them. That's what I do with my grandson. I never holler at him. I never spank him. I try to raise him that way. And so that's something that I suppose that I picked up as a grandpa. But anyways, on our journey, we go through things, our physical health, we have our mental health. And what I'm talking about, our mental health is, in our different ages, as a grandpa, I oftentimes forget a lot of things. Even like today, there was things in this presentation I wanted to say. I'm sure I forgot a lot of things. Our memory is not as good as it used to be. Our eyes aren't as good. I only got half of my teeth. Keeping track of what gifts we do have for people. When we see people, to remember that, we're different. My wife, Dorothy, she don't have no legs. She's stuck in a wheelchair. She can't go to ceremony. She can't go to Madewa's ceremony because it's too hard for her to sit in a chair like I'm sitting now. It's too hard for her to sit up. And that's really hard for our elders. But they're different struggles for the different ages. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. As you grow up as a young person, you go through different struggles. When you have a baby, you got a whole new world changes. Not just to leave your baby over there. Anyways. Also our emotional health, teaching ourselves not to get mad. That's a hard thing. How do you do that? How do you do that? Because you're always talking to yourself. I think one of the important things for me is also our spiritual health and realizing who we are as people. I teach that spirits, we call them manidus. Manidus are spirits. And that our spirits never die. I suppose that's the right way to say it. We're here on this side, in that our body dies physically, but our spirits keep going on. We think of our relatives that went before us. I can think of my mom and my dad and my stepdad, and my two stepdads, Frank and James, and my grandma, my two grandmas, my two grandpas, so many relatives. They're there watching over, on the spirit side. They're there with us. My son Joey, Billy, Freddie, Kenny, my brothers, my auntie Sharon and Berta, so many other relatives, my uncles, so many more, relatives that we lost. They're always there. They're sometimes you might see them, you might see something over there, huh? You might see a shadow. Sometimes you might feel them touch you. You'll feel something. What is that? You don't know what that is. And a lot of people are afraid of the manidus. They're afraid of the spirit side, huh? And I always tell people not to be afraid of that, because think of yourself as a spirit being too. You're a spirit. Well, you're a manidu. How would you feel if you tried to say something to your relative, your dad or your mom or your son or your partner? How would you feel if they were scared of you? You would feel sad in the spirit world. They're very sad when they're trying to get a hold of you. Sometimes they might come to you and see you, and the only way they're able to communicate with you is through your dreams. Oh, geez, I just dreamed about my son. Oh, geez, I just dreamed about Sharon. I haven't thought of her in a long time. Those spirits, that's the only way they can communicate to you, to tell you they're okay. Huh? to pass a message to you that things are better and that they're okay. But anyways, I just want to mention a little bit briefly about the spiritual part of who we are as people. There's a lot of other ceremonies to talk about, naming ceremonies. Some people don't have, we call them their spirit names. How you get that is through a gift of tobacco, okay? All tobacco, you want to bring traditional tobacco if you can. If you're giving somebody a gift, you bring them traditional tobacco. For Ojibwe, our traditional tobacco is red willow, and it's handmade. You can't buy it in the store. But I also learned in ceremony that all tobacco is the same. So if you buy some tobacco and you bring that to an elder, say you want to get your spirit name to help you on your journey. That's one way to do it, because that's the first part of getting in touch with your spirit being who you are, because it's that spirit that goes on that journey. Name giving, fasting, your first sweat lodge, learning your first song, These kind of gifts here, you can't go out and buy them, or you never should. Some people go out and buy pipes at the store. Those aren't the same. These should come as gifts. I've been gifted over 11 different pipes over the years. But those things you should just never go out and buy. And there's different, there's different ceremonies too. The teaching is that you need to reach out. That's the teaching. You need to reach out to the ceremony. You need to plan for it. Just like you're planning your first dance outfit. You need to do the work for that. You need to do the beadwork. You need to find the money to get the supplies. Just like making a drum. You need to figure it out. Just like your first job. You need to figure it out. I guess in a nutshell, that's what prevention is. The alternatives are early death, like from cirrhosis, like my dad. Early death. Alternatives are jail, prison. Not finishing school is just hardship for a lot of young people. And, as parents, that should be there. At least get them through, 12th grade. Get them their diploma or get them their GED. That should be the very, very basic thing as a parent that you can do for your children. Get their foot going. Tell them if they want to get any place, they have to learn how to work. That's the world today, huh? Believe it or not, face it, that's our world. We have to learn how to work, because that's what it is. We have to provide for our families. Living in tent city might be a good thing, but that's not a life. That's not a good way of life. It's a very, very hard way of life. I go out there and I see some of our relatives out there. I see my brother out there. I see a lot of friends out there that live in those camps. And that's a hard, pitiful life. Your feet get cold. Right now, some of them wearing tennis shoes and socks, and their feet get cold. Some of them are, have thin coats. Right now you gotta layer up coats. 1, 2, 3 layers of coats on. You gotta have 2 or 3 coats, not just one thick one, because that's not enough. Especially if you're gonna sleep out. One of my friends, Leon Ellis, was found on Broadway Avenue, sleeping out in the snow. You know, uh, uh, he got too drunk. And he sat down on a bus stop, waiting for a bus, and he went to sleep out in the snow, and that's where they found him. You know, I got another brother. His name is Chris Matheson. Chris was my brother Kenny's brother, but I always call Chris my little brother because he lived with my mom and she raised him. But it was hot summertime, end of July, and got really hot. And the weather was getting in the hundreds. But one night they started drinking. 1 or 2 in the morning, Chris decided he's going to go to sleep because he's tired. And he went to sleep out in the car. And they found Chris in that car a couple days later. You know, that heat got him. He died from heat stroke. It was an accidental thing. That's what I'm talking about. Your drinking gets out of control. You know, things like what happened to Chris. Things like what happened to my dad. I could tell you stories and stories about the prisons of the brothers that I seen there. Some who did things like I did, they didn't remember. Those are horrible, some of them are horrible, horrible stories, you know. But I do want to, say if you're going to change your life, change your behavior to set a goal, and make it a reasonable goal, because that's the only way. That's the only way nowadays. Learning how to work, learning how to be in a healthy relationship, learning how to do our traditional things. I need to do those. When did I go to my last sweat? Think about that. Some people, it's been 15 years. That one guy yesterday, I haven't been in a sweat in 15 years. You need to get back. It's like those AA meetings. You go back every week to charge your batteries, those that go weekly. I haven't been into a AA meeting for some time. I use sweat lodges to help me keep going. And I was just in a sweat lodge 2 days ago. And I do a lot of things. I'm retired. I pretty much stay home. I do some cultural, advice, cultural guidance for some of the brothers. They call me, but that's kind of pretty much all I'm doing. Just trying to raise my grandson in a good way. I lost a brother within the last week. This is his Wiscoshi. It's an eagle whistle. And his name is Jay Owen. And we talk about alcohol, we talk about drugs, but probably the most worst drug is simply smoking. And Jay liked the cigarette smoke. And he, in February, I went to see him at his house, and he was smoking. But he also had this strapper on his head that went up to his nose. He had an oxygen mask on. I said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "Oh, I got COPD." Oh. I said, "Don't you think you should quit smoking?" "No, I'm okay. I need this more than I need that." That was in February, and it's just been a week now since Jay died. This is November, and will be having his services shortly. But what I'm mentioning is that tobacco is probably one of the worst drugs there is for our people. When I think about it, I think about my mom. My mom died from COPD. Now I just lost one of my friends, Jay, Wabad McGeezy. But also my grandma. I mentioned my grandma, Mary. She died from lung cancer. She used to smoke Pall Mall Reds. And so I've been lucky now. It's been well over a year since I quit smoking. And I think about that, and it's a way of teaching. I don't like to tell people, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, you know. Where I work and where I do volunteer work, I see people smoke. They take smoke breaks. I don't criticize them. That's their business. You know, people get in trouble. That's the way I try to teach people. It's kind of like the same thing that Dorothy says in teaching. That's their way. When they want help from that way, we try to pick them up. Oh, good. You know. You want to quit drinking? Oh, good. I can help you now. You want to quit drugs and get off the streets, so to speak? Maybe I can help you now. If you want to quit smoking, it's important, you know, in our plugins and our pipes. When we smoke these, we never inhale the tobacco. We only puff. We only puff these. We only puff them. We never inhale the tobacco into these pipes. Not too many people know that about our traditional ways, is that we never inhale this tobacco. And so that's why Skip says, it don't matter what kind of tobacco they give you, it's all the same, because we only puff it anyways. So it's important. That's just a little lesson about Asema. Anyways, I don't know how long it's been, but I'll just say, miigwech. In our way, that means thank you. I'm hoping this little presentation will help maybe somebody. I have relatives that, you know, Gilbert Caribou from Grand Portage stayed sober well over 30 years, you know, because I helped him. I showed him the treatment. I helped him. He sobered up. My best friend was Harlan Dallman. When he died from pneumonia, he was sober over 38 years, you know. I have lots of relatives and friends that I was able to help pick up. But it's not just a simple thing. You have to remember things, and you have to pick up behaviors, and you have to practice things. And when you feel like using drugs, when you feel like drinking, you know, you have to think about those things. Take your tobacco, you know, put it out someplace. Learning to pray is important. You know, I take my tobacco and I put it by a matig, by a tree. You know, a tree has life. It's powerful. And we pray to those matigs, those trees. But we're not really praying to the tree. We're praying to the manidus, to the spirits. You know, our people were called pagans. They seen us sitting around. We crawl into these little wigwams, they called them. Bunch of them would get in there. They'd bring in rocks. And they'd set those rocks in there. They'd all sit around praying to the rocks. And that's what they believed about our religion. That we were sitting there praying to rocks. As Anishinaabe, we see life in things that others don't see life. We see life in grass. we see life in a sage, you know. We see life in a sema. We see life in a matig. We see life in these hides, you know. We see life in animals, you know. Some animal meat here. We see life. Yesterday, a brother was praying, and there was some sand, and that sand was going to be covered. But all of a sudden, this chipmunk come there, and they stopped that. Lord, hold it for that chipmunk, because that chipmunk was life, and everybody had to hold up, had to chase that chipmunk out of there. But that was important. It's life. It might be just a little life, but it's life, you know. Anyways, I just want to say, miigwech to ani mikui, miigwech to andayang. Just want to thank you for giving me this chance to speak. And all our relatives, you want to get a hold of me, get a hold of Andayang or get a hold of Jesse. They got my number. And so, miigwech, igawa men menawa.